Chapter 1. The disappearance at Thornwood Hallet was upon a particularly overcast afternoon in late spring that Hercule Poirot received the invitation which would steer him from the familiar lamplit halls of Baker Street to the venerable but somewhat neglected gardens of Thornwood Hall. The letter, bearing a seal of green wax embossed with an archaic family crest, a prancing stag entwined with thorned briars, had arrived by special courier. Its contents, written in a bold, unsteady hand, advised that Mr. Reginald Halby, the master of Thornwood, had disappeared without trace from the estate's celebrated labyrinthine garden maze. Local police had deemed the matter a misadventure. Halby's own family suspected foul play. Thus was Poirot entreated to come at once. "Mon Dieu, Hastings," Poirot said as he turned the final page of the letter, moustaches quivering with anticipation. "We have a most curious case. A vanishing, a labyrinth, and an unsteady hand in the scrawl. It is precisely the sort of puzzle that appeals to my little grey cells." Captain Hastings, who stood by the window, polishing his revolver for reasons known only to himself, laid down the cloth and approached. "A garden maze, you say? Rather more romantic than Baker Street, eh, Poirot?" "Romantic, perhaps," Poirot conceded, tucking the letter into his morning coat, "but also redolent of secrets. A maze is the perfect setting for concealment, its winding paths both disorienting and easily manipulated by one who knows them intimately." He straightened his cravat. "We must depart at once." By mid-morning, Poirot and Hastings were ensconced in the carriage bound for Thornwood Hall, a sprawling Georgian manor set amidst rolling Surrey hills. The journey was serene until, just past the village of Harthrow, the carriage jolted to a halt. A wire had been stretched across the lane, seemingly placed to impede their progress. Hastings leapt down. "Blasted trick! Someone clearly does, not wish us to arrive swiftly." Poirot surveyed the wire, twisting on itself in frayed edges. "A petty annoyance, or a warning. Let us proceed, Hastings. The culprit may wish to deter any meddlesome detective." They climbed down the muddy bank and unhooked the wire, allowing the coachman to continue. Soon they arrived at Thornwood Hall, its stone facade darkened by years of ivy, the gardens beyond promising both ordered beauty and secret corners. Mr. Reginald Halby's sister, Mrs. Beatrice Carrington, met them at the door, tall of figure, with eyes the shade of storm clouds. Her voice trembled with composure. "Monsieur Poirot, I feared you might never come in time. My brother vanished 2 nights ago during a lantern-lit stroll through the maze. We found his lantern at the centre, but no other trace." Poirot inclined his head. "Madam, may I see the lantern?" She led them through the echoing entrance hall to the garden door. There, near the maze's entrance, lay the lantern, its glass panes smeared with muddy fingerprint and one pane cracked. Hastings knelt. "The glass is fractured from within, indicating force from the inside, perhaps a blow." Poirot examined the brass frame. "Indeed, but note also the lack of blood or cloth snags. The blow was likely delivered with a small instrument, perhaps the heel of a shoe or the point of a trowel." He stood and turned to Mrs. Carrington. "Who among your household would have motive to harm Mr. Halby?" She drew a breath. "My brother's disappearance has strained many relationships. His steward, Mr. Grantham, resented his strict oversight, The head gardener, Mr. Sedgwick, grudged his orders, and Lady Eleanor Whitcomb, my brother's betrothed, harbours her own secrets. Very well, Poirot said. We shall question each in turn. But first, let us inspect the maze itself. They walked the dew-damp paths into the labyrinth, where high hedges of yew and thorn rose like living walls. The maze's design was complex. Concentric rings divided by narrow alleys, dead ends aplenty, and a central pavilion once used for garden parties. Now, in the dim light, it resembled a sombre cathedral of foliage. Poirot paused at the entrance. We must mark our route to avoid confusion. Hastings, do you recall the planisphere method I taught you? We shall map north to south, east to west. Hastings produced chalk from his pocket and marked a tiny arrow on the ground. Poirot led the way, chalking every turn. They reached the centre pavilion, a stone plinth beneath which lay the lantern's resting place. Moss-slick stones circled its base, and grasses had been recently trampled. Poirot knelt to examine one footprint, a men's brogue, size 9, its sole tread characteristic of a particular maker. He made a mental note. Nearby, a faint smear of wine had soaked into the soil, a burgundy red. Hastings sniffed. The wine stain is fresh, no more than a day old. Precisely, Poirot said, and the footprint too fresh for weather to erode. Our suspect passed through here after the lantern was dropped. He looked up at the twisting hedges. But how did he or she draw my brother inside without company observing? The hedge must conceal both path and intent. Notice here, he tapped a frond of thorn, the cut. Someone clipped a branch to widen the path, permitting easy passage. Hastings traced the cut. But this branch is heavy and would have fallen noisily, and unless done with a sharp tool, concealable and silent, Poirot replied, like a grafting knife carried in a pocket. They retraced their chalk marks to the entrance, each segment noted. Upon emerging, they found Mrs. Carrington waiting, accompanied by the steward Mr. Grantham, a gaunt man with a hawk-like nose, hands clasped in his waistcoat. Madam, Poirot said, we have examined the maze's centre. The lantern was indeed dropped there, and signs of tampering indicate premeditation. Pray tell, Mr. Grantham, did you last see Mr. Halby in the maze? Grantham swallowed. Yes, sir. He came for his nightly walk. He enjoyed reflecting among the hedges. I intended to follow, but in the turmoil of Lady Eleanor's telegram, declining my brother's proposal, I was occupied. Lady Eleanor? Hastings asked. She and my brother quarrelled, Grantham continued. His betrothal to her, arranged for fortune rather than love, angered her mightily. She left the house in tears, insisting never to return. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. We shall speak with her, of course. But first, I wish to see Mr. Sedgwick, the head gardener. Across the lawn, they found Sedgwick kneeling by a rose-bed, pruning shears in hand. His arms were large, his posture proud. He set aside his tools when Poirot greeted him. Mr. Sedgwick, you maintain these hedges. Did you notice any irregularities in the maze's structure? Any clipped branches or new paths? The gardener's pale eyes flickered. No, sir. The maze stands as it did. Though I must confess, 2 nights ago I heard voices. I thought it my lord conversing with someone at the centre, but when I arrived no one was there. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Voices! Was it a woman's voice? Sedgwick shook his head. It was too distant to tell, but I recall a soft laugh. Then silence. That will do, Poirot said, rising. Thank you, Mr. Sedgwick. They strolled back toward the house, passing the cold geometries of the maze. Hastings glanced at Poirot. We have footprints, a wine stain, a hoof-clamped branch, and voices. We must speak with Lady Eleanor next. Poirot nodded. Yes, Hastings. There is also the matter of the Manor's wine cellar. We have bloodless clues, but no body. Our missing Mr. Halby may yet be concealed, perhaps imprisoned in the vaults. Let us search there before questioning Lady Eleanor. They descended into the cool darkness of the cellar, lanterns in hand. Stone steps led to arched corridors lined with ancient oak barrels. In one corner lay wine racks turned askew, as though someone had rifled through them. Poirot inspected the labels. Claret, Burgundy, a rare port from Dom Perignon. Here, Poirot murmured, finding a small bit of torn fabric snagged on a peg. It was deep crimson, the lining of a woman's cloak. Our wine stain above, and this fabric here. Lady Eleanor wore a crimson cloak at the time of her departure. Hastings paled. But why would she follow him here? Poirot tapped the terracotta floor. A final confrontation, perhaps to plead for her betrothal to be nullified or to confess true love. Yet something more sinister occurred, and Mr. Halby vanished thereafter. A distant clank startled them, the wine-safe's lock closing somewhere deeper in the vault. Hastings raised his lantern. Someone else is here. They pressed on into the vault proper, the heavy door of wrought iron yawning before them. Inside, crates of rare vintages formed narrow aisles. At the far end, slumped against a stack of brandy casks, lay a figure in dark coat, unconscious yet breathing, Mr. Reginald Halby himself. By Jove! Hastings exclaimed, rushing forward to check. His pulse. He's alive, but barely conscious. Poirot knelt and gently shook Halby's shoulder. The master of Thornwood Hall blinked his eyes, confusion clouding them. Monsieur Poirot, he croaked. What happened? Poirot allowed Hastings to support Halby to his feet. We believe you were lured into the maze and then forced through a hidden passage into the wine vault. You lost consciousness and your assailant concealed you here. Halby's face drained of colour. My God, Lady Eleanor, my steward, my gardener. Who? Poirot rose, moustaches twitching. That, monsieur, we shall determine in due course, but for now you are safe. Hastings, help him to fresh air and brandy. We have sufficient clues to piece together this vanishing from the garden maze. They half-carried, half-supported Halby out of the vault. As he was guided into the night air, the first stars twinkled overhead, strangers in the silent sky. Poirot paused at the cellar's threshold, gazing at the twisted path through which he would unravel the final truth. Footprints, fabric, voices and wine, each a note in a carefully composed score. Thus closed the first chapter of Hercule Poirot and the vanishing from the garden maze. A disappearance undone by wit, will, and the steadfast little grey cells. And beyond the lantern's glow, the maze waited, its secret paths ready to yield their final revelation. Chapter 2. footprints, fragments, and furtive whispers. The morning sun rose over Thornwood Hall with deceptive serenity, its rays gilding the dew-damp, lawns and hourglass-trimmed flower-beds. Yet within the house, unease lingered like a stubborn fog. Captain Hastings, having spent a fitful night at Reginald Halby's bedside, joined Hercule Poirot in the grand breakfast-room, where silver coffee-pots steamed beside half-eaten croissants and fine china lay undisturbed. Hastings pushed aside his plate, eyes heavy with concern. How fares our missing gentleman? Poirot, seated with impeccable posture, folded his hands. Monsieur Halby's condition is stable, merely weakened by his ordeal in the wine-vault. He has memory of a brief struggle, then unconsciousness, only to awaken in darkness. His recollection ceases at the cryptic sound of footsteps receding. Just then, Mrs. Beatrice Carrington entered, her face pinched with anxiety. "Monsieur Poirot, I hope I am not intruding, but news from the vault. They found your trail of chalked footprints continuing along the corridor behind the kitchens, and there my gardener discovered a scrap of fabric caught on a latch. Deep crimson, yet none of my servants wear such colour." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Excellent, madame. More clues. Pray show me this fragment." They followed her through the echoing halls to the rear service wing, where the head gardener, Mr. Sedgwick, kneeled before the latch of a disused service door. On the stone floor lay a small, roughly torn bit of velvet, rich crimson indeed, reminiscent of Lady Eleanor Whitcomb's cloak. Sedgwick rose at Poirot's approach. "Monsieur Poirot, I found this just after sunrise. The latch is oil-stained, as though recently handled. The passage beyond here leads to a narrow corridor, under the house, once used by footmen, now sealed at both ends." He pointed to scuffed paint where a panel had been recently loosened. Poirot examined the fabric. "You were correct, Monsieur Sedgwick. This cloth matches the cloak Lady Eleanor left here 2 nights ago." He tapped the oil-smudged latch, and this hidden passage may have been employed to spirit my client away. Beyond the maze's outward winding, Hastings knelt to inspect the nearby floor. "And what of these prints? Smaller soles, likely a woman's shoe, tracked in the same chalked dust." Poirot traced a delicate pattern on the stone. "Yes, and both sets match our earlier find. In the maze's centre, the brogue of size 9 and a woman's dainty slipper. We have 2 accomplices, one heavy-footed, one light." Mrs. Carrington's lips quivered. "Both gardener and steward deny involvement. Lady Eleanor insists she departed directly for her carriage." Poirot's moustaches trembled with calculation. "Then we shall question them once more. But first, let us explore this subterranean corridor." He eased open the latch, revealing a narrow stone passage lit by a single oil lamp hanging from a hook. The air was musty, redolent of mildew and forgotten secrets. Hastings brought up the rear, revolver in hand. They proceeded 5 paces to a sealed door. Its wood swelled tight, hinges recently oiled, and its face bearing fresh chalk smears. Poirot pressed his ear, but heard no sound beyond. He tapped the wood gently. Hollow. "Someone has concealed a room here," Poirot murmured. He pulled a small crowbar from his coat pocket and, with practised care, levered the door open. It swung inward to reveal a cramped chamber lined with old oak shelves. On the lowest shelf lay Halby's jacket, its lining torn and rumpled, and beneath it a brass key-ring bearing 3 keys. one ornate, one plain, and one small and jewelled. Hastings whistled softly. Our missing man's keys, Poirot removed, the ring. He must have stowed them here before collapsing, or his abductors placed them to mislead. Note the dust pattern. His jacket lay atop these keys, concealing them. He examined the plain key. This likely fits the crypt in the mausoleum on the estate, where Halby stored family heirlooms. The ornate key, he surmised, opened the vault in the wine cellar. The small jewelled key, last, bore the stag crest of Thornwood. Undoubtedly, Lady Eleanor's jewellery box. Mrs. Carrington gasped, My jewellery! He never touched my jewels! Poirot's gaze was steely. Ah, madame, perhaps he did, or someone used his likeness to enter your sister's rooms. Yet this small key ties us to Lady Eleanor. He placed the ring in his pocket. Now, madame, you informed us that Mr. Grantham and Mr. Sedgwick were seen near the maze, but both deny purpose. We must interview them under oath, beginning with Mr. Grantham, your steward. They retraced their steps to the servants' hall, where Mr. Grantham polished silverware with trembling precision. Poirot presented the cloth fragment. You recognize this, monsieur? Grantham's hands froze. It's Lady Eleanor's cloak, and she never entered the servants' wing. Yet this hidden door led directly into your domain, Poirot said. Did you... Grantham shook his head vehemently. No, I was in my quarters, unwell. My cough kept me in bed. Nurse assisted me at midnight. I sent no one. Poirot studied him, brow furrowed. Then you must swear that you never loosened this latch nor passed through this corridor after dusk. I swear it, Grantham said, voice firm. I had no part in it. Hastings peered at the servant's boots. Polished black leather, sole unmarked by chalk. His boots bear no chalk. That matches his claim. Poirot inclined his head. Very good. Now, let us speak with Mr. Sedgwick. They returned to the garden entrance, where Sedgwick stood among topiaries, shovel in hand. Poirot held up the velvet fragment. Your thoughts, Mr. Sedgwick? The gardener's shoulders slumped. I recognize Lady Eleanor's crimson cloak, but I deny using it, or drawing Master Halby into that hidden chamber. His knuckles whitened as he gripped his shovel. I heard voices that night, but when I came to investigate, the moonlight glinted off a figure in cloak, and I fled. Poirot's gaze softened slightly. You fled at the sight of a cloaked silhouette, but returned to find this fragment, and yet you did not follow further. Sedgwick shook his head. No, I did not know what I would find, and I feared for my own life. Poirot tapped the fragment. Fear can lead us astray, but your hesitation does not imply guilt. Now, madame, we must question Lady Eleanor. They descended the grand staircase to the drawing-room, where Lady Eleanor sat before a fire, draped still in crimson velvet, her beauty marred by unrest. She rose at their approach, eyes flaring. Monsieur Poirot, Hastings, what further ordeal do you bring me? Her voice was sharp, brittle. Poirot offered the brass key-ring. Madame, these keys were found beside your late suitor's jacket. This small jewelled key bears your initials. Pray explain its presence in that hidden chamber. Eleanor's composure cracked. She sank into an armchair. He came to my apartments that night, in secret. He begged me to flee with him, to escape his family's strictures. In desperation, I gave him the key to my jewel box, only to find him gone by morning, and I dared not summon the servants. Hastings leaned forward. You expected him at your rooms, but he never arrived. Instead, he vanished in the maze. You tried to locate him alone, hence the corridor and the cellar. Eleanor covered her eyes. Yes, I feared scandal. I meant only to protect him and my reputation. Poirot's gaze was gentle. Madame, your motives were compassionate, yet secrecy nearly led to tragedy. Your gift of the key allowed him entry, but also left him vulnerable to abduction. She nodded, tears brimming. I am sorry for everything. Poirot extended a hand. Your confession spares you judgment. Now, let us reunite you with your brother. He signalled Hastings to fetch Halby, now convalescent in his sister's drawing room. Soon, the two siblings embraced, forgiveness and relief mingling in tears. With every puzzle piece in place, the steward and gardener exonerated, the corridor's purpose revealed, Lady Eleanor's motives laid bare. Poirot gathered them all in the central hall. There he delivered his final judgment. Thornwood Hall's labyrinth yielded a secret chamber where fear and love converged. Master Halby was not lost to caprice, but misled by the one he trusted most, his betrothed, Lady Eleanor. Yet neither malice nor greed guided her, only the desire to protect. Let this maze, madame, remind you that no secret, however well intended, is worth a loved one's peril. Beatrice Carrington stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Monsieur Poirot, your wisdom has restored our family. Halby placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. I understand now why you acted, my love. Let us leave the maze to roses and laughter, not secrets. Poirot inclined his head. Indeed, monsieur, mesdames. A maze is for joyful perambulation, not hidden regrets. May Thornwood Hall's gardens flourish in openness henceforth. As the household gathered in relief, Hastings turned to Poirot. Well, Hercule, another garden of mysteries uprooted by your little grey cells. Poirot's moustaches quivered in satisfaction. Yes, Hastings, let no maze confound our bonds again, for truth, once spoken, lights every path. And thus concluded the second chapter of Hercule Poirot and the Vanishing from the Garden Maze. A tale of entangled motives, hidden passages, and the ultimate triumph of love laid bare. Chapter 3. Shadows Among the Labyrinth Walls. The fog hung low over Thornwood Hall's grounds the following morning, softening the edge of every tree and hedge into misty outlines. Within the house, an uneasy hush had fallen. Word of Lady Eleanor's secret midnight rendezvous with her brother had circulated like a restless breeze, stirring suspicion anew. Yet Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings knew that beneath the swirl of rumours lay deeper currents, motive, method, and misdirection to be unspooled with patient method. They assembled in the panelled drawing-room shortly after breakfast. Mrs. Beatrice Carrington, pale with worry, pressed a lace handkerchief to her lips. Monsieur Poirot, since last night the entire household is on edge. Servants whisper in the corridors, the gardeners avoid the maze, even my dear Reginald lies restless in his bedchamber. Poirot steepled his fingers. Madame, unrest is the echo of misgiving. We must now turn our attention to the steward, Mr. Grantham, whose alibi last night rested on infirm health. I wish to examine that claim more closely." Hastings frowned. He swore he was ill, yet he appeared hale enough this morning. "Precisely," Poirot said. "Let us pay him a visit." They rose and traversed the great hall, ascending to the steward's quarters. Grantham answered a timid knock, his sheer cheeks still flushed pale. "Monsieur Poirot," he greeted, voice hoarse. "I trust my pledge last evening was sufficient." Poirot stepped inside the modest chamber, noting a cracked teacup on the bedside table and a pitcher of water nearly full. "Your cough prevented you from attending the household sit-down, but did it confine you entirely to this bedchamber?" Grantham swallowed. I requested Nurse Moffat. She left at 10. After that, I felt better and rose briefly to fetch fresh linens." "Fetch linens?" Poirot raised an eyebrow. "On this night of disappearance?" He motioned to the teacup. "Did Nurse Moffat administer any medicine?" Grantham nodded. "A cough mixture, honey and a tincture she carried. I drank it here." Poirot produced a small flask and sniffed its rim. "This scent, brandy, not honey. Someone substituted spirits for medicine. You feigned illness to avoid scrutiny, monsieur." Grantham's face fell. I feared being implicated. When Lady Eleanor fled in tears, I thought to follow discreetly. I intended to find Lord Halby and reconcile them, not to abduct or harm. Yet your deception provided cover." Poirot's tone was gentle but firm. "You must confess this to Mrs. Carrington." Tears shimmered in Grantham's eyes. "Yes, monsieur." Poirot bowed, and they left the steward to his remorse. Outside, Hastings exhaled. Another secret unmasked. "Indeed," Poirot said. "Now, Madame Carrington, we need Nurse Moffat's testimony." They returned to the servants' wing, where Nurse Moffat stirred porridge over a small stove. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot," she greeted, ladle in hand. "You wish to know of my medicine?" Poirot produced the flask. "Your cough syrup was genuine at 10, yet later replaced by brandy." She gasped. "Brandy? I filled this at 10. I left it by the bedside and retired. I did not touch it again. Then someone accessed your medicine caddy after you left. Only those with key to the cabinet, yourself, Mr. Grantham, and the lady of the house, could have done so." Nurse Moffat's pale face tightened. "I see. So Lady Eleanor may have tasted it. Or another." Poirot slipped the flask into his pocket. "We must question Lady Eleanor and Mrs. Carrington together." They re-entered the drawing-room, where both women awaited. Poirot spoke gravely. "Madame Carrington, your steward misled us about his movements. Nurse Moffat's medicine was replaced by brandy after 10. I suspect intentional sedation." Beatrice Carrington's eyes widened. "Sedation? Who would drug my brother?" Poirot turned to Lady Eleanor. "Madame, you gifted your brother your jewellery key, but you also stood to inherit should anything befall him, royally intended or not." Eleanor drew herself erect. "Monsieur Poirot, I loved Reginald. I had no wish to harm him, but you may have unknowingly exposed him to danger." Poirot's gaze was unwavering. "Now, consider the brandy in lieu of medicine. Someone intended to weaken him. Only a few knew his nightly routine. Steward, nurse, head gardener, and you Two surprises. The steward fabricated illness, and someone tampered with the medicine. Our suspect is common to both. Beatrice Carrington gasped, "Mr. Sedgwick!" They rushed to the garden, then back to Sedgwick's quarters. The gardener stood at his potting bench, hands sunk deep in earth. "Mr. Sedgwick," Poirot began, "you know the maze intimately. You may have overheard footsteps. Did you see my brother at midnight?" Sedgwick shook his head. "No, sir, but I heard a scuffle, then silence. I dared not investigate." "Yet you possessed both a grafting knife and access to the gardener's moonlit passage." Poirot tapped the velvet fragment. "You claimed you heard voices. You may have lured him with familiar accent. Then you drugged him to conceal your guilt." Sedgwick's shoulders slumped. "Yes, I loved his sister and despised his proposal to marry for money. I intended only to delay, to win her favour. But she never returned, and I panicked." Eleanor stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Edgar, but I am not his brother's prize to be won." Poirot nodded. "Your rivalry led you astray, Edgar. Confess to Mrs. Carrington, to my brother himself." Sedgwick lowered his head. "I will." As Sedgwick was escorted away, Poirot addressed the gathered household. "Thornwood Hall's maze has mirrored the human heart, twisting, thorned, yet opening into space when truth prevails. Let this disappearance remind all that love misdirected can become its own trap, but redeemed by confession, springs eternal." That evening Reginald Halby, still weak but recovered, joined the family in the library's warm glow. He embraced Mrs. Carrington and Eleanor in turn, forgiveness shining in his gaze. Nurse Moffat served brandy once more, genuine this time, in celebration of the gardener's goodwill pledge and the steward's honest confession. Hastings raised his glass. "To Thornwood, may its paths from now on be paved with truth." Poirot tapped his moustache. "Yes, Hastings. And may every hedge conceal only the wild rose, and never another man's dark secret." Chapter 4. The Secrets Buried in Thornwood's Vault. The sun had dipped low beneath Thornwood Hall's western hedges when Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings gathered once more in the library, its oak shelves lined with leather-bound tomes and dust motes dancing in the lantern light. Reginald Halby, now fully recovered, sat beside his sister, Beatrice Carrington, both thankful yet uneasy. The recent confession of Mr. Sedgwick the gardener had restored the household's peace, yet Poirot sensed heavier shadows still lurking within these venerable walls. "Madame," Poirot began, addressing Beatrice, "you mentioned that my brother possessed certain family documents, wills and deeds, stored in the vault beneath the house. May we examine these papers for signs of tampering?" Beatrice exchanged a glance with Halby. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. My brother and I discovered a hidden safe behind the portrait of our great-grandfather. We shall retrieve the key." They rose and followed the silver-whiskered butler, Mr. Giles Harper, through a concealed door behind the library shelves. Beyond lay a narrow staircase spiralling downward. The air grew cool and musty, redolent of time and secrecy. At the bottom, Harper paused before an iron door whose lock gleamed in the torchlight. "Master Reginald," Harper said, handing him a small brass key. "You found this concealed last season." Halby inserted the key, turning it with a soft click. The door swung open to reveal a vaulted chamber lined with stone niches. In the centre stood a sturdy oak safe set into the wall, its combination dials untouched by the dust of neglect. Poirot shone his lantern across the safe's front. "Please open it, monsieur." Halby dialed the safe's combination, learned only by himself and his late father. The heavy door swung inward, revealing shelves of legal documents, land deeds, wills, and a thick-bound volume of a family trust. Halby picked up the trust ledger, gently flipping its pages. All appears in order, yet. He paused at the ledger's end. The final entry, the capitalization of farmland, seems incomplete. Poirot leaned forward. Indeed, this entry here, dated only 2 nights past, bears no signature, and the ink appears fresher than the rest. He held his lamp closer. The gravity of the ledger's last page revealed a scrawl in a hand unlike Halby's firm penmanship. Hastings tucked a hand to his chin. "That suggests someone attempted to forge your consent, perhaps to divert your inheritance." "Precisely," Poirot said. "Someone sought to modify the estate's succession. We must identify whose hand penned this false entry." He proffered the ledger to Halby. "Examine your writing samples." Halby fetched a bank letter, signed for thousands, and compared the flowing loops. His brow furrowed. "This script matches Mr. Mallory's, my solicitor's handwriting, yet I entrusted no one with my private documents." Poirot's moustaches quivered. "Mr. Frederick Mallory, trusted adviser to the Halby family. His position granted him access to both vault and quill." He tapped the forged entry. "The motive, to alter your trust so that certain parcels of land, profitable woodlands, would pass to another heir of Mallory's design." A muffled groan startled them. From a dark corner of the vault chamber emerged the solicitor himself, tall and composed, hands raised. "Monsieur Poirot, I can explain." Poirot's aquamarine eyes bored into Mallory. "Madame Carrington, Captain Hastings, please remain above while I question our solicitor." They led Mallory to a modest anteroom adjoining the vault. Mallory's composure faltered as the chamber's torches cast long shadows across his face. Poirot perched upon a small chest, waiting for Mallory to speak. "Mr. Mallory," Poirot began, "the forged entry in my brother's trust shows your hand. Why would you seek to alter his inheritance?" Mallory's shoulders sagged. "I confess, I faced ruin. My own land investments failed. I thought, if I redirected a portion of Thornwood's endowment to pay my debts, I could save both my family and this estate's continuity. But I never intended to harm Reginald, only to delay the formal signature until I secured my finances. When I saw him missing, I panicked." Hastings frowned. "And the corridor, the masked thugs in the maze, not your doing?" Mallory shook his head. "No, I remained here in the vault, engrossed in codicils. I never left this chamber until Master Halby's anguished cry reached me." Poirot studied him. "Yet the forged entry was dated 2 nights ago, before Mr. Halby's disappearance. You signed your name here. Surely someone observed you, who else knew the combination to this vault?" Mallory's face paled. "Only the butler, Mr. Harper, but I never involved him." Poirot rose. "Then I must speak with Mr. Harper." They returned to the vault chamber where Harper awaited, hands folded. Poirot presented the ledger. "Your lock is secure, Harper, yet the safe's contents were altered. Did you observe Mr. Mallory here?" Harper inclined his head. "Yes, Monsieur, I found him here past midnight. He appeared distraught, clutching the ledger. He begged me not to mention it. Hastings pursed his lips, so Harper knew, but remained silent. Poirot tapped his moustache. Yes, yet confessions given in darkness must be repeated in light. He turned to Mallory. You sought financial salvation through forgery, and then, believing you had the vault's secrecy, risked your client's ruin. Your panic over Master Halby's disappearance drove you further into desperation. Mallory sagged in defeat. What shall you do with me? Poirot's gaze was solemn. You shall remain at Thornwood Hall under supervision until I present the evidence to the proper authorities. In the meantime, you will confess your crimes to the family, erasing the forged entry and restoring the trust to its rightful form. Mallory bowed, shame and relief mingling on his face. I accept your verdict, Monsieur Poirot. With the family trust secured and the solicitor's confession ensured, Poirot led the party back to the library. Beatrice Carrington and Reginald Halby awaited, their faces etched with anxiety. Poirot recounted the discovery, the forged ledger, the sole access via Mallory, and Mallory's motives and confession. Beatrice pressed Halby's hand. We are saved. Halby placed his brother's hand atop theirs. My thanks, Monsieur Poirot. You have preserved my family's legacy and spared me a lifetime of doubt. Poirot nodded. Madame, Captain Hastings, my work here is nearly complete. The gardener's indiscretion and the solicitor's forgery have been laid bare. Yet one question remains. Who orchestrated the initial abduction in the maze's heart? Who drugged you, monsieur, and why? Halby's brow furrowed. That I do not know. I have no further memory, only the cold stone of the vault walls. Poirot's eyes glinted. Then let us examine one final clue. The scrap of crimson velvet and the wine stain in the mazes. Centre! Only one person wore that cloak, Lady Eleanor Whitcomb. Though Sedgwick confessed his motive, and Mallory his, the drugged wine in your lantern remained unexplained. Beatrice's flush deepened. My Lady Eleanor, did you partake of wine that evening? Lady Eleanor rose, tears shining. Yes, when my brother surprised me in the maze. I offered him wine from my flask to steady his nerves. It was cordial, not poison. If he was drugged, it came later. Poirot tapped his moustache. Someone replaced your cordial with a sedative, blending it in the lantern. That one must have been both in the maze and again in the vault. Hastings crossed his arms. Who else had knowledge of both locations? Poirot smiled faintly. Only three. The gardener, the steward, and the butler. Mr. Harper's domain extended from servant corridors to wine vault. We have yet to question him on this final matter. They turned to Harper, who bowed his head in sorrowful anticipation. Monsieur Poirot? He whispered. Poirot's gaze was gentle yet firm. Your duty as butler covered every corner of Thornwood Hall, from the maze path's edge to the wine cellar's depths. Yet you remain silent on who tampered with Lady Eleanor's cordial. Pray, speak freely. Harper's voice trembled. I saw Mr. Sedgwick slip through the passage with a flask. He carried it into the maze. Then he carried your brother into the vault. I did not intervene, fearing scandal, and I should have. Sedgwick stepped forward, remorseful. Yes, monsieur, I borrowed Lady Eleanor's flask. intending only to guide him to my green keep and persuade him against the marriage. But in my agitation, I added a sedative to spare his flighty temper. I never meant him harm. Halby's shoulders slumped. You drugged me, and then Mallory forged my trust. 2 betrayals by those closest to me. Poirot's expression softened. Human motives, however misguided, often spring from love and fear. You have all confessed. Your misdeeds laid bare in honest light. Now Thornwood Hall may heal. The company gathered in the library as Hastings poured fresh brandy, this time the pure cordial of reconciliation. Each raised a glass. "To Thornwood Hall," Beatrice Carrington said, "and to the family and servants united by truth. To honesty," Halby added, "the surest path out of any maze." "To love," Lady Eleanor whispered, "gentle, not forced." "To service," Sedgwick concluded, "guided now by loyalty, not mischief." Poirot raised his glass last. "To the little grey cells which saw all, and to the bigger hearts which confessed all." They drank deeply, the amber liquid kindling warmth in each chest. Outside, the dusk deepened, and the Thornwood Hall's ivy-clad walls stood sentinel over gardens now freed from shadow. Within, laughter and forgiveness echoed as the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Proof that even the darkest labyrinth yields to the light of shared truth. Chapter 5. The thorns of betrayal. The dawn light crept over Thornwood Hall's parapets, painting the gardens in a soft gold that belied the tension still clinging to its corridors. Word of the startling revelations beneath the vault had spread quickly. The steward's deception, the gardener's ill-fated sedative, the solicitor's forgery. Yet even as confidences were spoken and apologies made, a sense remained that not all was explained. Some deeper sting lay hidden among the stones and pathways of Thornwood's ancient grounds. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings reconvened in Gire Effigier, the library, the great central hub of the hall, where Reginald Halby and Beatrice Carrington awaited. Halby, though wearied by his trials, now showed a spark of determination. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, "I feel the maze itself still conceals a final truth. My lamp was dropped not simply by accident, but perhaps to cover something or someone lurking in the undergrowth." Poirot inclined his head, fingers steepled. "Yes, monsieur. The trowel or blade that clipped the hedge, the footsteps muffled by soil, and the wine stain upon the plinth all point to careful orchestration. Yet one must ask, to what end? We have motives aplenty. Sedgwick's desire for Beatrice's affection, Mallory's greed, Lady Eleanor's desperation. But did any seek to do more than mislead? Did any intend lasting harm, or simply mischief gone wrong?" Beatrice rose, smoothing her gown anxiously. "I cannot bear that my home's beloved maze became a weapon. I beg you, Monsieur Poirot, to discover if any unknown hand remains at work." Poirot's moustaches quivered. "Then we shall widen our inquiry, beginning with those who most revere this hall, the village folk." By mid-morning, Poirot and Hastings, accompanied by Halby and Harper, set off on foot toward the nearby village of Hearthrow, the neat cottages lining its narrow street. At the end stood the Blackthorn Inn, its sign depicting a black hawthorn branch heavy with white blooms, a favourite haunt of Thornwood's staff and local labourers. Inside, they found the inn's keeper, Mrs. Tabitha Crane, a robust woman whose keen eyes missed nothing. She bustled forward with mugs of ale and pots of tea, greeting Poirot with deference. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, your business here?" she asked, ladling steaming tea. Poirot inclined his head. "Madam, we seek recollections of any strangers or unusual happenings near Thornwood's grounds these past weeks." Mrs. Crane's brow furrowed. "Well, there was that fellow, Eric Benton, a poacher, used to slip through the west hedge at twilight. He's gone off in the past. 2 nights, drunk perhaps, or anxious." Hastings scribbled in his notebook. "A poacher in the maze. Interesting. Anyone else, madam?" She thought a moment, then shrugged. "Mr. Algy Pemberton, the solicitor's clerk, seen skulking after hours near the hall last week, bag in hand. Also, Mrs. Munro, the seamstress, came by to mend Lady Eleanor's cloak, and she had a lad with her, strong lad, who could carry heavy things." Poirot tapped his moustache. "Mark these down. Now, has any stranger, never seen before, passed through Hearthrow lately?" Mrs. Crane leaned over. "A travelling showman, calls himself Columbine, passed by night, setting up his tent in a field near the maze. Strange fellow, painted cheeks, quick hands, left before dawn 2 mornings ago." Poirot smiled faintly. "A travelling showman, capable of misdirection. We shall investigate further. Thank you, madam." They left, Poirot's mind already turning over possibilities. The poacher, the clerk, the seamstress's lad, and a showman, all with means to access the maze. We must interview each. Hastings nodded. "Shall we begin with the poacher? He perhaps slipped through unseen paths." Back at Thornwood, Sedgwick awaited them in the gardener's lodge. His face was weary, but determined. "Mr. Sedgwick," Poirot said, "we learned of a poacher named Benton in the vicinity. He might have used your maze's secret paths. Do you know this man's usual route?" Sedgwick wiped his hands on his apron. "Yes, monsieur. He had a concealed door I once found open, a small gap in the west hedges. He used it to hunt rabbits at night. I closed it, but perhaps he forced it open again." Poirot examined a section of hedge. Notes, faint, claw marks upon the ivy. The poacher likely returned, and perhaps witnessed Lady Eleanor's flight, or the abduction below. "Then he might be a witness," Hastings said, "if we can find him." Sedgwick nodded. "He sometimes sleeps in an old barn by the pond. I can show you." They walked to the abandoned barn, where the air still smelled of damp straw. Poirot carried a lantern, its glow revealing slow, deliberate footprints in the dust. Hastings drew his revolver. Inside, they found Eric Benton, asleep on a pile of sacks, snoring softly. Hastily, they pinned him to the wall with Hastings's barrel. "Wake up, Benton," Hastings whispered harshly. "Monsieur Poirot wishes to speak." Benton's eyes flew open, alarmed. "Cripes, don't shoot, mister! I was just... Poirot produced a small notebook. "You know the maze, and you saw Lady Eleanor there 2 nights ago?" Benton shook his head. "No, I saw master. Halby staggering, lantern flickering. He looked woozy. I offered a hand." His gaze flicked to Hastings's pistol. "But I ran. Didn't want no trouble." "Tell us the rest," Poirot said gently. Benton squared his shoulders. "I saw Sedgwick creeping by the hedges, carrying something in a bag. He dropped it near the centre, then followed a moment, later dragging Halby. I thought Sedgwick was robbing Halby, so I kept my head down. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, the gardener in the act, but he confessed only to sedative. Yet this witness saw him with a bag, likely the sedative. Benton nodded. "That's all I know." Poirot patted his shoulder. "Thank you. You may go and stay out of the maze." As Benton fled into the dusk, Poirot turned back to Sedgwick's lodge. Hastings stared after the poacher. Mon Dieu, Hastings! So our gardener performed the sedative, as he confessed. But the bag he carried, what contained it? Sedgwick's face reddened. "My trowel and a vial of laudanum, which I regretted adding to Lady Eleanor's wine. I carried them both in my gardening bag." Poirot nodded. "That explains the motives and implements. Yet the forged trust and Lady Eleanor's secret flight remain resolved. Only one conspirator remains unexamined, the solicitor's clerk, Algy Pemberton, and the mysterious showman." That evening, they sought out Algy Pemberton at the solicitor's office within Thornwood's stable block. Pemberton, a trim young man with nervous eyes, sat among ledgers and parchments. "Monsieur Pemberton," Poirot said, "we have learned your master, Mr. Mallory, altered the trust. You were seen leaving the hall with a bag. Tell us your involvement." Pemberton gulped. I delivered papers, sealed documents, to a client who requested discretion. He said he would return the parchments in exchange for a retainer." "Who was this client?" Hastings pressed. Pemberton's brow furrowed. He wore a cloak, had painted cheeks like a travelling entertainer. He called himself Columbine. Poirot nodded. "The showman you mentioned in the village, he visited the hall?" Pemberton nodded. "He crept through the maze door at dusk, then to my master's office. He bribed me to deliver the ledger for him to forge and to conceal evidence. Then he vanished into the vault, pocketing the small key." Hastings eyed him. So the showman was the mastermind behind Mallory's forgery, and used Pemberton's route to access the vault. Pemberton swallowed. "Yes, and he threatened to expose me if I spoke." Poirot tapped his moustache. "No more." He produced a small writ. "You are free of that threat. Now you must reveal this showman's identity." Pemberton nodded. "He is local actor-entrepreneur Jules Carmen, once of the Lyceum Theatre, dismissed for forgery himself. He now travels with masks and shows." Poirot smiled. "Then the labyrinth's final twist is nearly revealed." They returned to Thornwood Hall, where the library awaited. The evening's lamplight cast long shadows upon the shelves. Poirot assembled the household. Halby, Beatrice, Eleanor, Mallory, Sedgwick, Grantham, Harper, and Pemberton, before the crackling fire. "Monsieur Carman," Poirot began, "has exploited your maze and vault to manipulate land deeds, sedate my brother, and forge your trust. His cunning use of disguises, from showman to clandestine intruder, enabled every misdeed. I propose we lure him here one final time." Hastings grinned. "A trap worthy of a final act." Poirot continued. "We shall stage a reading from the newly restored trust ledger in the vault chamber, admitting only Jules Carmen by invitation sent under Mallory's hand. When he arrives to complete his scheme, we shall apprehend him." The household exchanged charged glances, each aware that the final confrontation loomed on the morrow. Mallory dipped his head. "I shall write the letter at once." As the company dispersed to their duties, Hastings turned to Poirot. "A perfect denouement, as always." Poirot's aquamarine eyes gleamed in the firelight. "Yes, Hastings. Tomorrow we shall catch our phantom in the labyrinth's deepest twist and restore Thornwood Hall to its rightful calm." Thus closed the third chapter of Hercule Poirot and the Vanishing from the Garden Maze. The revealing of hidden witnesses, the unmasking of miscreants, and the promise of one final, decisive act beneath the ancestral stones. Chapter 6. The Snare in the Vault. The dawn of the trap day broke pale and chill across Thornwood Hall. A thin mist crept among the hedges, settling like a phantom cloak upon the labyrinth's winding paths. As the household stirred, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings convened in the vault chamber, its iron door standing ajar like a beckoning Moor. Within, a single lantern's flame quivered beneath the vaulted ceiling, illuminating the oak safe's newly repaired lock, and the central plinth, where Reginald Halby's journal and the family trust ledger lay open, awaiting the showman's arrival. Monsieur Poirot surveyed the scene with cool precision. "Hastings, I trust you have prepared the second lantern, one filled with a mild soporific, so that when Jules Carmin attempts to replace the ledger, he shall find himself inclined to slumber." Hastings lifted a small brass lantern from a side table. "Yes, Hercule, the tincture of valerian is already in place. The aim is a gentle drowse, not permanent incapacitation." He closed the lantern's shutter and tucked it beneath his coat. "Excellent! Now, let us review the plan once more." Poirot gestured toward the ledger. "At precisely midday, Mallory's letter will be delivered to our rogue, summoning him here to complete the transaction. He will slip through the secret corridor, unknown to others, and enter the vault. There he will discover the ledger, seize it, and attempt his final forgery. At that moment, Hastings, you will release the second lantern's soporific vapours. He will succumb quietly, and we shall apprehend him swiftly." Hastings grinned. "Like catching a fox in a trap, Hercule." "Just so, Hastings." Poirot's eyes shone. "Now, where is Monsieur Mallory?" Frederick Mallory, the solicitor turned penitent, stepped forward from the shadows. In trembling hand, he held the carefully worded missive. "Monsieur Carmin, your final visit to Thornwood is requested at noon today. Bring the ledger and keys as arranged, that our business may be concluded discreetly. The trust's authenticity awaits but your signature. F. Mallory, solicitor." Mallory placed the letter upon the ledge by the safe, and withdrew quietly, his conscience heavy, but his resolve firmer for the end in sight. Noon arrived with near imperceptible whisper. Poirot and Hastings took their stations. Poirot perched upon the sturdy chest in the corner, Hastings beside the hidden valve of the soporific lantern. Outside the vault, Reginald Halby and Mrs. Carrington waited, feigning disinterest in their chambers below. A faint scraping of stone on stone heralded the intruder's entrance. Hastings's hand drifted toward the lantern. The door creaked, and in slipped Jules Carmin, the travelling showman, his gaudy theatrical cloak swirling about his ankles. He paused in the threshold, eyes flicking to the safe and the ledgers, open pages. Poirot stepped forward, voice mild. "Monsieur Carmin, welcome. Our solicitor, Mr. Mallory, anticipated your promptness." Carmen's painted cheeks paled as he recognized the ledger. Clasping the small jeweled key in one hand, he advanced toward the safe. "Mallory's terms have changed," he muttered, removing a slender steel blade from his cloak. "He dithered too long. I intend to claim my reward, by fair right or misdeed." Hastings's finger tightened upon the lantern's latch. Carmen withdrew the ornate key, unlocked the safe, and opened its door with a triumphant grin. He reached inside, removing the family trust and tucking it beneath his cloak. Then, with careless confidence, he set down the forged papers, and Hastings struck. With a swift motion, Hastings opened the second lantern's shutter. A pale mist drifted forth, curling toward Carmen's face. The showman blinked, staggered, and his blade clattered to the floor. His eyes grew heavy. He slumped against the wall. "Mon Dieu!" Hastings exclaimed quietly. "He's out like a candle." Poirot nodded, moving swiftly to secure Carmen. "Cover his face with the cloak, Hastings, and bind his wrists with spare cord." Hastings obeyed, binding Carmen's arms behind his back before a single groan escaped the gentle snare. Poirot surveyed the scene. The ledger lay on the chest, open to its final page. He marked the forged entry and removed the blade from the floor. "This confirms Monsieur Carmen's intent, but let us not pass judgment until the family gathers." They returned to the library, where the household waited in anxious council. Halby rose at their entrance, face pale but steely. "Has the ledger been recovered?" Poirot laid the volume upon the table. "Yes, monsieur, and we have taken the principal conspirator." He indicated a pair of constables whom Harper had discreetly summoned. The officers led in Jules Carmin, head bowed, his showman's mask replaced by shame. Halby's eyes glinted. "You, sir, would rob your friend of his legacy." Carmen's voice cracked as he knelt. "Monsieur Halby, I sought only the means to repay my debts. Debts incurred to save a village orphanage I once founded. I thought your family fortune could provide a permanent endowment, but I see now that my method was monstrous." Beatrice Carrington knelt at Halby's side. "Your cause," she said gently, "may have been noble, but betrayed our trust and endangered my brother." Carmen bowed his head. "I understand your anger. I accept whatever punishment you deem fitting." Poirot rose to deliver the final pronouncement. "Jules Carmin, by your own admission you designed the scheme, forging the trust, drugging Monsieur, abduction into the vault, and concealment of evidence. Yet your motives sprang from charity, albeit misguided. I propose the family spare your life and profession, so long as you devote yourself to honest service at Thornwood's grounds, repaying debts by planting new orchards for the orphanage." Halby exchanged a glance with Beatrice and nodded. "So be it. You will become Thornwood's gardener's assistant under Mr. Sedgwick's supervision, and your earnings will be placed in trust for the orphanage." Carmen closed his eyes in hauteur, relief. "Thank you, monsieur. I shall toil honestly until the day I die." Poirot inclined his head. "Then let us mark this resolution in the ledger with a final, true entry." Taking quill and ink, Halby inscribed beneath the restored trust, "Resolved this day that Jules Carmen shall serve Thornwood Hall in recompense for his misdeeds, his wages designated for the Heartthrow Orphanage Fund." He dipped his finger in wax and pressed it to the page as seal. The assembled household exhaled as one, the air rife with relief. Later that evening, Thornwood Hall's lanterns glowed through the mist as the family and household gathered for a modest supper in the great hall. Carmen sat at the upper table, clad in simple workman's garb, a look of humbler content upon his features. Hastings raised a glass of sparkling lemonade in toast. "To Thornwood Hall," he proclaimed, "and to the garden's labyrinthine paths, for they led us, at last, to the heart of compassion." Reginald Halby stood, voice earnest. "To Monsieur Poirot, whose little grey cells unravelled every tangle." Poirot bowed with a flourish. "And to the golden key of truth, which unlocks every door, vault or heart alike." The company clapped with warm applause. In the shadows, the labyrinth's contours lay silent beyond the windows, its hidden passages sealed by confession and forgiveness. Thornwood Hall, once caught in the thorns of betrayal, now reaped the blossoms of trust and reconciliation. Captain Hastings leaned in to Poirot. "Another maze, Hercule, but a splendid resolution." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Yes, Hastings, and may Thornwood's grounds henceforth bear only the footsteps of honest hearts, never those of phantom conspirators again." And as the candles guttered low, and the hall's ancient stones absorbed the laughter and song, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings retired, leaving behind a family reborn, a garden redeemed, and a final bour for truth in the winding walls of the maze. Chapter 7. The Festival of the Hidden Paths. 2 weeks had passed since the dramatic unmasking of Jules Carmen in the vault and the restoration of Thornwood Hall's family trust. In that time, the estate's wounds, some self-inflicted, others forced, had begun to heal. The secret corridors were sealed or posted with authorized personnel-only signs. The garden maze gates were rehung on sturdier hinges, and the oak safe's lock was reforged under the watchful eye of both Reginald Halby and his solicitor, Mr. Frederick Mallory, now returned to honest practice. Yet, for all these practical repairs, Thornwood Hall lacked a final celebration to bind its people together and to welcome back the light. It was therefore with genuine excitement that Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings accepted Beatrice Carrington's invitation to the Festival of the Hidden Paths, a midsummer gathering in which every member of the household and every local villager would retrace the labyrinth's roots, this time in broad daylight, and conclude with a feast beneath the rose-arched pavilion. On the morning of the festival, the mist still clung to the hedges like silken shawls, but the sun soon burned it away, revealing the maze in full glory. The hedges were newly clipped, their leafy walls alive with white hawthorn blossoms. Bluebells and foxgloves, once regarded as dangerous, now marked garden borders in controlled patches, reminders of past misuses, but also of nature's enduring beauty. Paths were swept clear, and bright chalk arrows guided pilgrims along a winding course. Poirot arrived in his customary style, bowler hat tilted at a rakish angle, cane in hand, and little grey cells already whirring with anticipation of the au fur, day's symbolic resonance. Hastings, less ceremonious but equally keen, carried a wicker basket of picnic provisions, supplied by Mrs. Cartwright and the kitchen staff. They entered the maze's main gate just after 10 o'clock, where Giles. Harper stood with a clipboard, greeting each guest by name. Even Mr. Sedgwick, now gardener-in-chief and wearing a crisp linen smock, welcomed his former adversaries with genuine warmth. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, so pleased you could join us, Harper said. Today we celebrate new beginnings. Poirot smiled his approval. Let us begin our journey then. Hastings! Hastings opened the basket. Eclairs, cucumber sandwiches, and fresh strawberries. Perfect fuel for a stroll. They set off down the first corridor, marked by a chalk arrow pointing east. Poison oak and foxglove, once concealed, now stood behind low wooden fences with explanatory plaques. One plaque read, Foxglove, Digitalis purpurea, once used to poison, now tamed for heart medicine under expert care. Poirot paused to read it, tapping his temple. Education is the antidote to fear, Hastings. Hastings munched on an eclair and strawberry jam. Further along they encountered Edward Lucas, distributing small notebooks to guests. For your reflections, Lucas explained, please jot down your thoughts at each station, your fears, your hopes, your pledges, so we may compile a volume of our festival's spirit. Halby and Eleanor Whitcomb walked arm in arm, greeting neighbours and thanking them for their patience. Lady Eleanor's crimson cloak was swapped for a floral shawl of pale blue, symbolising the gentle peace between siblings and betrothed. At the maze's fourth bend, Poirot and Hastings found Miss Florine Drake, awaiting with a display of lanterns, each painted in vivid colours and engraved with a feather motif. For our final path, we light the way, she said, handing them each a lantern. And when evening falls, we shall walk from the centre to the pavilion by lamp glow, carrying our feathers of promise. Poirot accepted his lantern with a nod, a fitting tribute to our journey from darkness into light. Hastings raised his lantern, smiles everywhere. Who knew a maze could be so heartwarming? They reached the maze's heart, the stone plinth where Halby's lantern had first been found. Today, instead of a lone lantern, the plinth bore a circular garland of white roses interwoven with hawthorn. Guests formed a ring around the stone, each placing a single rose within the garland. Beatrice Carrington stepped forward, flute of sparkling, elderflower in hand. In this ring of roses, she proclaimed, we honour those who confessed their errors and those who forgave them. May these blooms stand for our unity. They toasted, and a soft breeze lifted petals into the air like applause from the hedges themselves. As afternoon slipped toward dusk, the procession continued outward, the hedges parting like green waves to reveal new vistas. A hidden fountain, where Nurse Moffat once brought Halby water, a small alcove bench where Mr. Grantham had perfected his silver polishing routine, and a narrow side path along which Hastings had first chalked his arrows under Poirot's direction. At each station, guests recorded their sentiments in Lucas's notebooks. One entry read, I walked with fear, but found kindness. I pledged to speak my truth, even when shadows loom. Anne Beaumont, parlour maid. Another, for every hidden corridor I once followed, may I now lead others into the sunlight. Alistair, Gray. Technician Poirot reviewed entries with satisfaction, each note a lantern of its own. As evening fell, lanterns now burned in warmly coloured glass. The procession lantern-bearers assembled in the maze's centre, where Mallory solemnly returned the small jewelled key to Halby, its metal warmed by the day's sun. "With this key," Mallory said, voice thick with emotion, "we unlock not only doors but hearts. I offer it now as a symbol of my renewed integrity." Halby took the key, and to universal applause, placed it within the central plinth's base, forever sealing the space against misuse. They set off toward the rose-arched pavilion, lanterns guiding their steps. The final stretch of hedge bore, white ribbons tied at every fork, a meet point of promise, where each guest paused, laid down a rose, and whispered a personal vow. Hastings, following Poirot's example, tied his white rose ribbon to a branch. "I vow to keep my word, even when lost among life's hedges." Poirot's vow hung on a thorn above. "I vow to speak truth gently yet firmly, so that no one strays into darkness." The pavilion glowed with lanterns entwined among climbing roses. Long tables heaped with rustic fare. Hog roast, orchard, pies, crusty breads, and honeyed cheese awaited the company. Mrs. Cartwright and the kitchen staff, their faces alight, replaced crumbs and filled goblets in a steady rhythm. Harper stepped onto a small dais at the pavilion's head, tapping a glass for attention. "Friends, neighbours, and beloved household, we have journeyed from confusion to clarity, from deception to forgiveness. Let this feast sustain us, and may the festival of the hidden paths be our annual beacon of unity." Raindrops pattered on the pavilion's roof, an unexpected blessing for the roses below, and the assembled lifted their glasses. "To Thornwood Hall! May its paths remain open, its hearts revealed, and its maze be forever a map to understanding." The festive noise, laughter, music from a small string quartet, and the soft clinking of glasses. Poirot stood beside Hastings, surveying the joyful scene. "Mon ami," Hastings whispered, "never did I think a maze could end so splendidly." Poirot's aquamarine eyes glowed. "Ah, Hastings, the maze is but life's mirror. When we face its shadows together, we find each other's light." As the quartet played under lantern glow, and the roses trembled in the gentle rain, the Thornwood community danced and dined, hearts unburdened and bonds strengthened. The golden promise had found its final home, not in a secret vault, but in every path, every petal, and every whispered vow beneath the labyrinth walls. Thus closed the 7th chapter of Hercule Poirot and the Vanishing from the Garden Maze, a show, festival of roses, revelations, and the enduring triumph of shared truth over every hidden path. Chapter 8. The Unveiling of the Labyrinth's Legacy. The morning after the festival of the hidden paths dawned clear and bright, as if Thornwood Hall itself breathed a contented sigh. The hedges glistened with dew, and the roses, pruned and tended with renewed care, nodded in gentle approval. Yet even amid this serenity, Hercule Poirot felt a subtle undercurrent of expectation. The festival had healed many wounds, but no celebration could erase the labyrinth's history of secrets. Today he had arranged one final ceremony, the unveiling of Thornwood's new labyrinth plan. Its walls opened for all to explore, without fear or mischief. By 9 o'clock, the family and household had gathered in the rose-arched pavilion. This time draped not with festival garlands, but with heraldic banners bearing the intertwined stag and hawthorn of Thornwood's crest. Reginald Halby stood beside his sister, Beatrice Carrington, both clad in dark suits that spoke of solemnity. Lady Eleanor Whitcomb, the reformed steward Mr. Grantham, florist Mrs. Munro, the former gardener Jules Carmin, Nurse Moffat, and even Frederick Mallory took places on simple wooden benches arranged in concentric rings. Poirot, resplendent in a tailored morning coat, stepped forward to a small dais. Beside him lay a rolled parchment, the new labyrinth map. Hastings, ever the able assistant, held the unrolled chart, awaiting its moment of revelation. "Friends of Thornwood," Poirot began, voice carrying easily in the still air. "2 weeks have passed since we navigated the maze's shadows and uncovered betrayal's paths. Yet today we transform this labyrinth from a place of concealment into one of community." He unfurled the map, revealing the maze redesigned, hedges trimmed lower, hidden passages sealed, and gentle alcoves added for reflection. The crowd leaned forward. Where once a concealed door led to the wine vault, now sat a fountain of reflective water. Where poison foxglove once grew unchecked, now lavender and rosemary formed fragrant borders with explanatory plaques. Hastings pointed as Poirot continued. Here, at Point Alpha, Lady Eleanor discovered the maze's central plinth. We have installed a stone bench and placed the ring of white roses, so that all may pause in remembrance of honesty's triumph. Here, Hastings traced a chalked path. Where Jules Carmin once plotted mischief, now stands a sculpture of 2 clasped hands, symbol of redemption and solidarity. Poirot smiled. "And here," he tapped a corner near the maze's entrance, "we place the annual council marker, where every Midsummer's Eve the community shall renew its vows. This labyrinth shall no longer shun light, but celebrate it. Each turn a reminder that truth guides every footfall." He stepped back as the crowd murmured approval. Beatrice rose and placed her hand upon the map. "My brother and I dedicate this new maze to every soul who found courage here. Nurse Moffat, Mr. Grantham, Mr. Sedgwick, Mr. Mallory, and our reformed gardener, Mr. Carmin. Let their confessions guide us henceforth." Halby followed, voice firm. "May Thornwood's walls echo only laughter and friendship, not fearful footsteps. May every path lead to understanding." Poirot raised a hand. "Now let us walk these paths together, each of us guiding a friend into the heart of Thornwood's legacy." Parchment in hand, Hastings led the way into the maze's entrance. One by one, household and villagers followed Poirot's measured pace. They paused at each marker, reading plaques, offering roses, and placing ribbons with personal pledges. "I vow to speak with courage, that no path may trap my tongue." Mrs. Munro, seamstress. "I vow to tend my duties with honesty, that no blade of grass hides deceit." Mr. Grantham, steward. "I vow to listen with compassion, that every voice may find refuge." Miss Moffat, nurse, as they approached. Us the central fountain, Poirot turned to Hastings. "Observe how this water mirrors the sky, clear, calm, and open to all." He dipped a quill into a nearby ink pot and wrote along the fountain's rim. "In clarity we find ourselves, in reflection we find each other." Hastings grinned. "Only you, Hercule, would turn a maze into a mirror." They exited the labyrinth wearing warm smiles, sunlight glancing across the fountain's spray. Under the pavilion once more. Giles. Harper beckoned everyone to seats. Soon, long tables brimmed with fresh fruit tarts, herb-infused breads, chilled lemonade, and flasks of elderflower cordial. The same gentle comforts that had nurtured reconciliation 2 weeks before. As Mrs. Cartwright moved among the tables, refilling platters, Poirot rose to address the company. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "this day marks the labyrinth's final transformation. From trap to tapestry, from hidden alleys to open avenues. Let Thornwood Hall's new maze of light serve as testament that every secret surrendered shines a path for others to follow." He raised his glass, and all joined him to Thornwood's maze of light. May every footstep be guided by truth and fellowship. Amid the applause, Jules Carmin, garden's assistant no more, but orchard keeper by new appointment, stepped forward with a wicker basket of young saplings. One by one, guests took a tree and planted it in a ring around the fountain, each sapling a living emblem of Thornwood's renewed promise. Hastings planted his near the sculpture of joined hands, while Halby and Eleanor planted theirs together, their hands brushing in a promise of love, unshrouded by secrets. When the last tree was in place, Hastings surveyed the clearing grove. "Mes amis," he called, "come see the festival of the labyrinth trees." The company gathered around the newly planted circle. Poirot tapped his cane, silencing them. "In the years to come," he said, "these trees shall grow strong and tall, roots entwined as our own bonds now are. May their branches remind all who pass that honesty gladdens the heart and steadies the soul." He bowed with elegant flourish, and laughter rippled through the clearing as children began dancing between the young trees, their ribbons streaming in the breeze. As twilight gathered along the horizon, lanterns were lit in delicate paper globes among the branches, casting warm pools of light across the grass. Music from a lone violinist drifted through the grove, as villagers and household members joined hands in a circle dance, each step an affirmation of Thornwood's bright future. Captain Hastings, watching the revelry, turned to Poirot. I must admit, Hercule, this is my favourite of your finales, a labyrinth giving birth to a forest of unity." Poirot smiled, eyes reflecting the lantern glow. "Ah, Hastings, we have shown that even the most twisted paths can lead to growth and beauty. Now, as the moon rises over Thornwood Hall, I believe our work here is complete." They clasped hands in quiet gratitude, gazing upon the dancing lanterns and the ring of saplings. The maze behind them lay silent, its mysteries laid bare, its legacy now one of light and life. And so, beneath the whispering leaves of Thornwood's new orchard, the festival of the hidden paths concluded, its final chapter written not in deception, but in seeds sown for every season yet to come. Chapter 9. The Crypt Beneath the Rose Eaves. The week following the festival of the hidden paths passed in tranquil harmony at Thornwood Hall. The newly planted saplings thrived beneath the summer sun, and the maze, now christened the Maze of Light, echoed only with laughter and the rustle of pages as guests strolled its open corridors. Even Lady Eleanor Whitcomb resumed her charitable visits to Harthrow's orphanage, while the reformed showman, Jules Carmin, tended the orchard with diligent zeal. Frederick Mallory resumed his legal practice, now honest in every draught, and Mr. Sedgwick supervised the gardens with a frank smile rather than furtive glances. Yet Hercule Poirot, ever attuned to the faintest tremor of the human heart, felt that an undercurrent still flowed beneath Thornwood's calm. One evening, as the family dined beneath the pergola festooned with climbing roses, he addressed Reginald Halby in a quiet tone. "Monsieur Halby, I trust you have reflected upon the maze's history, its origins and the motives of its original architect?" Halby laid down his fork. "You mean my great-great-grandfather, Sir Erasmus Halby. I have read the estate's records. He built the maze as a gift for my grandmother, but also, so the rumours say, as a place to conceal private sorrow of the family." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, some rumours suggest Sir Erasmus hid more than tears within these hedges, perhaps documents or tokens best forgotten. I propose one final exploration. Beneath the central fountain of roses, I suspect we may discover a crypt long sealed." A hush fell over the table. Beatrice Carrington exchanged a glance with Lady Eleanor. Halby's eyes narrowed with a mixture of fear and resolve. Dinner concluded in silence as the household retired, each consciousness burdened by the possibility that Thornwood harboured yet another secret. The following dawn, Poirot and Hastings descended into the maze of light, lantern and silver trowel in hand. The roses around the central fountain had grown lush and white, their petals glimmering with dew. Hastings knelt beside the circular stone basin, tracing a faint seam in the cobblestones beneath the water's edge. "Here, Hercule," Hastings murmured. "The seam runs in a perfect circle." Poirot knelt as well, observing the seam's moss-choked groove. He tapped the stone 3 times with the heel of his palm. A soft click echoed, and a section of the cobble slid aside, revealing a narrow, spiral staircase descending into darkness. "Ah, mon ami," Poirot whispered, "the true heart of the labyrinth." He lit his lantern and motioned to Hastings. "Shall we?" They climbed down the secret stair, the walls slick with moisture and age. Dripping water echoed like whispered voices. At the staircase's base lay a low stone door, carved with the Halby stag crest entwined with thorned briar. Poirot knelt, running a gloved finger across the carving. No lock, but a concealed latch. "Observe, Hastings." He pressed a hidden button in the thorn's carving, and the door swung inward with a sigh of stale air. Within lay a small crypt, its arched ceiling supported by slender columns carved from alabaster. Niches in the walls bore the faint outlines of sepulchral effigies. At the far end, a stone sarcophagus sat beneath an oculus, through which a single beam of light fell upon its lid. Hastings swallowed. "Good heavens! This is the family crypt." Poirot stepped forward, lantern held high. "Yes, and it appears Sir Erasmus intended it hidden beneath the maze, so that only those he trusted could enter. Let us examine the sarcophagus." The advanced, noting dust-coated lanterns on brackets, perhaps Sir Erasmus's own. Poirot ran a finger along the sarcophagus lid, where carved letters read, "Erected in silence to love, unacknowledged and truth concealed." Hastings crouched to peer at the seam. "The lid may lift with a lever." He spotted a sculpted lion's paw at the lid's base. Pressing its claws inward, the lid slid aside to reveal a hollow. Within lay two objects, a leather-bound journal tied with crimson ribbon, and a sealed parchment scroll bearing the Halby seal in dark green wax. Poirot picked up the journal, first gingerly untying its ribbon. "This diary belonged to Sir Erasmus," Poirot said, opening the first page. The script was small and precise. "In love with one Lady Mirabel Greer, yet bound by duty to wed for alliance. This maze shall hide my sorrow, its paths a sanctuary for her memory. Should I fall before reconciliation, let this journal reveal all." Poirot thumbed through the pages, each entry chronicling Sir Erasmus's clandestine visits, letters intercepted, and his desperate hope for Lady Mirabel's return. The final entry, dated a month before his death, read, "Tonight I place our portrait upon the inner vault door, and seal it until my heir proves worthy of truth." Poirot looked to Hastings. A portrait, hidden beyond this crypt's antechamber, which must be sealed. They scanned the walls for a second door. Hastings touched one of the alabaster columns and felt a draught. He pressed it, and a relief. Panels swung open to reveal a small chamber. Within stood a gilded portrait of a radiant young woman, Lady Mirabel Greer, draped in ebony velvet. Beneath the frame lay another leather bundle, and a key carved in ivory, shaped like a rose. Poirot lifted the key. "Here is Sir Erasmus's final test. My heir must accept love and truth before this key may unlock the safe above." Hastings extracted the sealed scroll beside the journal. And this scroll, Poirot broke the green. "Seal and read. To my successor, if you seek to claim these lands, you must acknowledge the love that first inspired their beauty. Offer this key and scroll to your heart's companion. Only then will the way be opened." He paused, meeting Halby's anxious eyes. "Monsieur Halby, your ancestor required not only lawful right but heartfelt union. Your marriage to Lady Eleanor, once arranged, now chosen in love, fulfills that covenant. Place the key and scroll upon the sarcophagus." Halby stepped forward, trembling slightly, and laid both items upon the sarcophagus lid. The carved lettering glowed faintly, and the two alabaster columns at the chamber's entrance slid inward, revealing a final private safe built into the crypt's wall. Its door swung open to reveal a small wooden chest, its lid etched with the maze's blueprint and the Halby crest. Poirot motioned to Hastings. "Shall we open it?" Hastings nodded and lifted the chest's lid. Inside lay a signet ring of gold, its band engraved with the stag and hawthorn, and a cluster of loose documents tied with ribbon, charters, manorial rights, and a letter of undeniable proof that the maze, the vault, and the crypt had all been designed as a test of character by Sir Erasmus. Poirot held up the signet ring. "And this ring designates the true heir, one who honours love and truth. Reginald Halby, please take the ring." Halby slipped it onto his finger, closing his eyes at the weight and warmth of the gold. "I understand now my ancestors' wisdom, and my own journey." He turned to Eleanor, taking her hand. "Will you accept this ring as token of my love and our bond, ancient and renewed?" Eleanor's eyes filled. "With all my heart." Poirot smiled. Then The final seal is broken." He retrieved the documents. "These charters confirm your rightful inheritance, and the maze of light, the orchard, and the maze's crypt shall henceforth stand open to those who pledge love and truth." They ascended the spiral staircase, the chest and ring carefully borne by Hastings. Emerging into the rose-scented air, they found the household awaiting near the maze's entrance. Halby held out the ring for all to see. Poirot addressed the assembled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have traversed Thornwood's every hidden path, through betrayal, confession, forgiveness, and love. Now we emerge beneath the rose eaves, bearing more than mere inheritance, the legacy of a family that honours both law and heart. Let the ring worn by your master this day remind us that each true path begins with love, acknowledged, and truth revealed." Cheers rose among the guests. Eleanor pressed forward to embrace Halby, and the household joined in applause. Nurses, stewards, gardeners, and former conspirators alike. Hastings turned to Poirot. "A labyrinth within a labyrinth, Hercule, and now its final enigma laid to rest." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yes, Hastings. Thornwood Hall's secrets have been unburied, its paths reopened, and its legacy fulfilled. In love and truth, every maze leads home." As the golden ring glinted in Halby's hand, and the morning sun crowned the newly planted orchard, Thornwood Hall stood at peace, its hidden crypt unveiled, its heart unsealed, and its labyrinth forever transformed from a place of concealment into a testament of enduring honesty. Chapter 10. The Promise. Sealed beneath Thornwood's sky, a crisp autumn breeze swept through Thornwood Hall's rose gardens, where the first frost had glazed the petals of late-blooming blossoms in shimmering silver. The maze of light, its hedges now a tapestry of gold, orange, and scarlet, stood as a testament to the transformations achieved within its winding walls. Yet even as the leaves fell in swirling dances, an air of expectation pervaded the estate. For today marked the final chapter in Reginald Halby's journey to rightful lordship. The sealing of the legacy unveiled beneath the crypt's vaulted stones, and the very future of Thornwood Hall. By early morning, the Hall's entire household, family, staff, and reformed miscreants alike, had assembled in the great foyer, its marble floors polished to a mirror sheen. At the head of the company stood Hercule Poirot, resplendent in a charcoal frock coat, his moustaches waxed to perfect symmetry. Beside him stood Captain Hastings, hands clasped behind his back, and a proud Reginald Halby, bedecked with the golden signet ring of his ancestor Sir Erasmus upon his finger. Beatrice Carrington and Lady Eleanor Whitcomb stood on either side of Halby, their expressions alight with both solemnity and joy. Poirot raised a slender finger to command silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have traversed Thornwood's deepest secrets, from the labyrinth's concealed passages to the wine vault's hidden cellars, and down to the crypt where our ancestors' final testament lay buried. Today we stand at the threshold of a new era, one of transparency, unity, and stewardship worthy of Sir Erasmus's design." He paused, letting his words settle like dew upon gathering hearts. Reginald Halby stepped forward, lifting the signet, ring for all to see. "This ring," he said, voice steady, binds me to a legacy greater than wealth or title. It commits me to uphold the values of love acknowledged, truth revealed, and community cherished. In the crypt, my ancestor wrote, of love unacknowledged as a garden's poison. Today, I pledge that no secret shall blight Thornwood's future. Hastings, stationed at Poirot's left, produced a small scroll tied with crimson ribbon, the identical ribbon Sir Erasmus had used centuries ago. Halby untied the ribbon and unfurled the scroll. With deliberate care, he read aloud. By my hand Sir Erasmus Halby ordains that my heir, who honours love and truth above all, shall bear this ring and keep this. Mays open as sanctuary, and sanctuary alone. May deception find no refuge here. May compassion and honesty guide every step beneath Thornwood's sky. Beatrice Carrington advanced and placed her hand upon Halby's shoulder. My brother, I stand with you in this promise, as do all who dwell here. She gestured to the assembly. Nurse Moffat, the steward Mr. Grantham, Mr. Sedgwick the gardener, Miss Drake the prompter, Mr. Lucas the accountant, Mr. Mallory the solicitor, and even the reformed Carmin, now Thornwood's orchard keeper. Watchir, by one, each approached the dais to affirm their own pledge. Nurse Moffat, I vow to care for this family and its people with unwavering honesty and compassion. Mr. Grantham, I vow to serve with integrity, that no trust is misplaced beneath my watch. Mr. Sedgwick, I vow to tend these gardens openly, that beauty may grow from sincerity. Miss Drake, I vow to prompt no secret, but to shine light upon every line. Mr. Lucas, I vow to keep true accounts, safeguarding the hall's fortunes in plain sight. Mr. Mallory, I vow to practice law with conscience, guided by truth's bright flame. Jules Carmin, I vow to sow grace in every orchard row, repaying this kindness in honest toil. As each voice rang clear, Poirot watched with satisfaction, his little grey cells content that the final strands of deception had been woven into truth's tapestry. Halby folded the scroll and presented it to Poirot. Please keep this safe, Monsieur Poirot, Halby said. You have shepherded us through every twist. Poirot bowed, accepting the parchment. Monsieur Halby, it is you who now holds Thornwood's destiny in your hand. I merely guided your steps. Captain Hastings then stepped forward, a small box in hand. At his signal, Carmin produced the ivory rose-shaped key Sir Erasmus had left behind. Hastings opened the box to reveal a crystal chalice set upon crimson velvet. Carmin placed the key within the chalice, where it gleamed like a dawn star. Hastings turned to Halby. This chalice, filled with the first wine of the harvest, symbolizes Thornwood's fruitful future, rooted in honesty. He poured a single oak-aged claret into the chalice. Drink, Hastings urged. As your final step, drink and renew the covenant. Halby lifted the chalice in measured reverence, then drank deeply. The crowd watched, breath held. When he set the chalice down, his eyes shone. It shall be so, Halby said. He handed the chalice to Beatrice, then to Eleanor, and it passed around until every soul had touched it, each person bound by a united promise. Above them, the hall's great stained-glass window caught the rising sun, casting prismatic lights across the marble floor. Thornwood's crest, the prancing stag and thorned briar, gleamed in living colour, as if nature itself blessed the moment. At last, Poirot stepped forward to close the ceremony. "Dear friends," he began, voice gentle, "we have resolved the labyrinth's mysteries and bound ourselves in mutual trust. Yet remember, the greatest maze lies within the human heart. May these pledges guide you through every season, each turn unveiling new paths of compassion and truth." He lowered his voice in parting counsel, "And should shadows ever again gather, let your joined vows light the way." A breathless pause followed, then a swell of applause and tears. Music rose from the unseen organ in the hall, filling every corner with hope. The company dispersed, embracing and laughing, stepping into an autumn sky bright with promise. That afternoon, the maze of light stood open to the village and countryside, its gates unmanned, its paths free. Children ran beneath the rose arches. Villagers wandered to the crypt's entrance, no longer fearing its shadows, but marvelling at history laid bare. The orchard's apples glowed like jewels. The labyrinth's hedges offered safe passage to all. As dusk settled, Poirot and Hastings shared a quiet walk through the maze of light. Lanterns, unlocked from Sir Erasmus's brackets, lined the paths, their flames reflected in the late rose's tears. Hastings sighed happily. Hercule, an estate reborn, what's not to love? Poirot's aquamarine eyes sparkled. Ah, Hastings, the true marvel is the conviction of the human spirit. Thornwood's maze may have tested them, but united they found the strength to open every path. Now, as house and garden merge in harmony, I believe my work here is done. They emerged into the hall's courtyard, where the servants gathered to bid farewell to their detective. Mrs. Cartwright laid a simple wreath of rosemary and laurel at Poirot's feet, symbols of memory and victory. The steward, the gardener, the nurse, the prompter, the accountant, the solicitor, and even the orchard keeper all lined up to offer their thanks and farewells. Poirot accepted each with polite bows. To Halby he offered one final word. "Monsieur, may your stewardship be guided always by love and illuminated by truth." Halby clasped his hand. "I promise, Monsieur Poirot. Thornwood Hall stands ever in your debt." As the carriage rolled, away under the silent watch of the labyrinth's lanterns, Poirot and Hastings gazed back once more at the hall's silhouette against the twilight sky. Hastings tilted his hat. "So, Hercule, shall we return to Baker Street, and to mysteries less luminous?" Poirot tapped his cane thoughtfully. "Yes, Hastings. Yet I shall always treasure the labyrinth where love and truth found their home, and if ever its gates need reopening, you and I shall be ready." They rode off into the gathering night, leaving Thornwood Hall and its maze of light glowing softly in the autumn dusk, its final legacy sealed beneath its sky, a testament to the power of honesty, the triumph of the human heart, and the gentle art of unlocking every hidden path. Chapter 11. Echoes through the Thornwood. Season's autumn at Thornwood Hall had given way to winter's hush by the time Feast of the Hidden. Paths and the signet ceremony had faded into legend. Frost coated the maze of light's hedges each dawn. and the first snows lay like sugar upon the orchard's bare boughs. Inside the hall, warm tapestries and crackling fires kept the chill at bay, but the memory of transformation, of secrets unearthed and promises sealed, glowed brighter still in every heart. Now, nearly 6 months after Sir Erasmus's crypt was uncovered and the labyrinth reborn, Reginald Halby surveyed his estate with a mix of pride and solemn duty. The season's latest responsibility fell upon him in early December, hosting the annual Thornwood Council, a gathering of family, staff, and village representatives to reaffirm the vows made in summer's light and to plan the coming year's stewardship of both land and legacy. As dawn's pale lantern light shimmered along the frost-laced hedges, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings arrived at Thornwood Hall's once secret passage, now plainly marked Council Entrance. No longer was it a covert threshold. Rather, it stood as a symbol of open governance. A handful of villagers, schoolmasters, orchard keepers, and former workmen greeted them alongside Nurse Moffat, Mr. Grantham, and Miss Drake, each armed with a copy of the Winter Council agenda. Inside the main hall, Halby and Beatrice Carrington welcomed guests with steaming bowls of chestnut soup and freshly baked rolls. Lady Eleanor, now fully integrated as Thornwood's patron of the arts, arranged seating near the grand fireplace. Flickering flames danced upon tapestries depicting the Halby line's storied past, humble beginnings, flowering fortunes, and the labyrinth that had tested them all. At precisely 10 o'clock, Halby rose to address the assembly. "Friends," he began, voice clear and warm, "our first annual council in summer's bloom proved our capacity for unity and renewal. Today, as winter's frost reminds us of life's cycles, we meet again to chart Thornwood's course through the year ahead." He gestured to a large map laid upon an oak table. Scribbled notes marked paths made safe, hedges replanted, and the village orchard's boundaries extended. Poirot, invited as council adviser, took his place beside Hastings. Halby indicated the first agenda item: 1. Maintenance of the maze and crypt preservation. The group debated pruning schedules, the removal of invasive ivy from the crypt, and the installation of discreet handrails for elderly visitors. Nurse Moffat volunteered to oversee accessibility, while Mr. Sedgwick proposed a new planting of winter rosemary along the exit path. Next, Beatrice presented 2. Orchard Expansion and Orphanage Fund. Jules Carmin, now Thornwood's orchard keeper, spoke with passion of grafting techniques to strengthen apple yields. Each barrel of surplus produce would be sold at market, proceeds dedicated to the Hearthrow Orphanage, fulfilling Carmin's pledge and Mallory's restitution. Villagers applauded, recalling how Alden, the orphanage matron, once wept at the orchard's bounty. Hastings noted the scheme's financials in ledger form, to be submitted by Mr. Lucas with utmost transparency. The third topic, 3. Education and community outreach, fell to Lady Eleanor, who outlined plans for weekly reading circles in the mazes, alcoves, and seasonal open house days, when villagers of all ages could wander the maze of light guided by volunteer stewards. Miss Drake offered to write and stage short moral plays for the children, using the labyrinth's stones and hedges as living sets. The schoolmaster of Hearthrow, present among the villagers, vowed to incorporate Thornwood's history into the local curriculum. By midday, the council moved to the chapel annex, once private, now open, to hear the final item. 4. Legacy and ceremonial traditions. Here Poirot rose to speak, his aquamarine eyes twinkling. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "our journey began in darkness. A vanished heir, a hidden crypt, a forging storm of secrets. But it is no accident that Sir Erasmus chose the mazes, heart as his sanctuary, for a labyrinth mirrors life's trials. Today, we stand not to celebrate the solving of a riddle, but the forging of a covenant, one renewed with every dawn." He paused, then raised a small crystal vial. "In our first council, we pledged love and truth. I now present the vial of reflection, filled with water drawn from the crypt's well, a source of both knowledge and memory. Let each participant dip a finger and sign the council register, binding each new member to Thornwood's ethos." One by one, from Halby to the schoolmaster, each dipped a finger into the water and pressed it upon the parchment's margin, tiny droplets of ink forming a constellation of pledges. Even Carmin, once the maze's phantom, left his mark, as did Nurse Moffat and little Emily Talbot, the hall's bright-eyed parlour-maid, now turned archivist. With all signatures in place, Hastings replaced the register beneath glass in the foyer, a permanent testament to Thornwood's communal promise. Mrs. Cartwright declared the council closed, and celebratory trumpets sounded in the courtyard beyond the windows, while guests warmed themselves by a bonfire, skewering spiced apples and sipping mulled cider. Poirot strolled the frost-crisp gardens with Hastings. The maze of light's hedges, now dusted in white, stood silent guardians of memory, their paths traced in lantern glow for the council's closing procession. Hastings exhaled, warming his hands over the fire's embers. "Mon Dieu, Hercule, there is a certain poetry to it all. Secrets reborn as traditions, a maze turned into a mosaic of community." Poirot smiled, his moustaches quivering. "Yes, Hastings, Thornwood's legacy now weaves threads of many hands, family, servants, and villagers alike, into a tapestry too rich for any vault's concealment. The labyrinth's final gift was not in its construction, but in its unravelling." As the first stars glimmered overhead, Halby led the lantern-lit procession through the maze, each bearer holding a white lantern painted with a single rose. They paused at the central fountain, where a new plaque had been installed. "In memory of Sir Erasmus Halby, architect of trials, guardian of truth, may every seeker find their path by the light of honesty." Halby touched the plaque gently, then turned to his companions. "Let us end today as we began, together, with hearts unburdened." He raised his lantern, and the circle of light glowed like a star come to earth. Their steps traced the maze's corridors in reverse, pausing at each alcove as Miss Drake recited a short verse on the virtue of transparency. At the final bend, they emerged beneath the rose-arched entrance, where Mrs. Carrington awaited with a bowl of rose-hip tea, a soothing conclusion to the day's crisp air and earnest deliberations. Hastings accepted a cup and handed one to Poirot. "To Thornwood," he toasted, "and to councils that bind us." Poirot lifted his cup in turn. "To Thornwood's sky, where every maze's secret is but a star awaiting its moment to shine." They sipped the fragrant brew, steam rising like whispered benedictions, while the gathering dispersed beneath the frost-pruned hedges. Thornwood's grounds, now tranquil under lantern glow, had yielded every hidden path to the light of shared purpose. As Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, Halby and Beatrice pressed their hands in farewell. Lady Eleanor and Nurse Moffat smiled, the labyrinth's final echoes still warm in their hearts. Even Mr. Mallory and Mr. Lucas lingered to express gratitude for the promise they had kept and the trust they had earned. Stepping into the carriage, Hastings sighed with contentment. Hercule, I doubt any case will ever match the majesty of Thornwood's maze and its seasons. Poirot tapped his cane thoughtfully. Ah, Hastings, the true wonder is not in puzzles solved, but in lives transformed. Thornwood Hall's legacy now stands as a beacon, its labyrinth open to all who seek its light. And as the carriage rolled away into the winter night, Thornwood Hall's lanterns winked farewell beneath a sky pricked with stars, each one a promise renewed, each hedged path a testament that the truest journeys lead us back to the warmth of shared truth. Chapter 12. The Dawn of Thornwood's Everlasting Light. Winter's final breath whispered through the frost-glazed hedges of Thornwood Hall, carrying promises of spring beneath a sky still pale with retreating stars. In the rose-arched courtyard, where once secrets festered in hidden passages and darkness cloaked betrayal, there now stood a tableau of renewal. Lanterns, hung the night before, shone with candlelight in icy glass, guiding the final footsteps of a season's journey. Today, Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and the gathered household would close the book on Thornwood's long saga of mystery, binding every trial into triumph beneath the rising sun. The ceremony began at first light. Reginald Halby, his golden signet ring catching dawn's glow, stood at the pavilion's head alongside his sister, Beatrice Carrington, whose gentle strength had shepherded them through every twist. Lady Eleanor Whitcomb, now Thornwood's honoured patron, flanked him, while Nurse Moffat, Mr. Grantham, Mr. Sedgwick, Miss Florine Drake, Jules Carmin, Frederick Mallory, and Edward Lucas formed a semicircle. Villagers from Hearthrow, in warm winter cloaks, filled the perimeter, their breath steaming in cordial camaraderie. Poised at the centre, Poirot raised a slender hand. His chiselled profile, framed by waxed moustaches, reflected a serenity born of resolution. "Friends," he began, voice clear as chapel bells, "we stand upon hallowed ground, once the stage of disappearance and deceit, now the cradle of confession and compassion. Over these many months, Thornwood Hall has borne witness to vanishings, revelations, and the unmasking of hidden hearts. It has tested our courage, our loyalty, and our faith in one another. Yet through every labyrinthine turn, we emerged at last into the cleansing light of truth. Today, we gather not to reopen wounds, but to consecrate a legacy of renewal, one that shall outshine every shadow of the past." He stretched forth the crystal chalice commissioned for the inaugural council, now cleansed of brandy's ruby depths, and filled instead with spring water drawn from the crypt's well, pure, cold, and resonant with memory. "With this chalice," Poirot continued, "we offer a final libation to memory and hope. Each of you, who has borne the weight of Thornwood's secrets, is invited to drink and by so doing pledge unceasing vigilance over love and truth. One by one, beginning with Halby and his sisters, then spanning the household to the villagers, each stepped forward. Their kisses to the water echoed like silent vows. Mr. Grantham drank first, voice hushed. I pledge to guard Thornwood's trust henceforth with open heart and steady hand. Nurse Moffat followed, tears shining. I pledge to heal both body and conscience, that no harm may fester unseen. Mr. Sedgwick sipped, cheeks rosy. I pledge to tend these grounds with care, that beauty may grow from confession's soil. Miss Drake tasted, smile bright. I pledge to prompt truth's voice, that every stage may bear honest testimony. Mr. Mallory drank, lips trembling. I pledge to write every word in lamp-lit clarity, leaving no line in shadow. Mr. Lucas raised his glass. I pledge to account for every fraction of coin, illuminating the vaults of finance. Carmine tasted, spirit renewed. I pledge to sow every orchard row in service, repaying debts in diligent labour. Lady Eleanor drank, eyes soft. I pledge to champion art and kindness, weaving our community closer still. Finally, Hastings, herself, ever the faithful aid, and the villagers drank in heartful chorus, each adding a fealty to the ring of memory that encircled Thornwood Hall. Poirot smiled at the outpouring. And now, my final service, to seal this moment in Thornwood's story. He produced the crimson ribbon scroll, newly inscribed. On this day, at the close of seasons past, we bind ourselves in perpetual pledge to honour love confessed, to speak truth gently yet firmly, and to uphold our bonds in every dark of heart. May Thornwood Hall's walls ever echo the laughter of the honest and the light of the unburdened. He rolled the scroll and placed it beneath the chalice's pedestal, covering it with a wreath of winter roses and holly. A hush fell as the ceremony's weight grounded every soul. Then, with a nod from Halby, the world seemed to exhale. Sixterson, final act awaited. The procession through the maze of light, guided by lanterns and wreaths of ivy and white roses. Children, once silent observers, danced ahead, scattering petals upon the frost-kissed stones. Poirot and Hastings followed side by side as winter's pale sun cast long shadows between the hedges. At the maze's heart, the granite plinth, now ringed by the roses of all seasons, bore new carvings. The Halby crest encircled by the symbols of love, a rose, truth, an open book, and service, a clasped hand. Hastings tapped the carving gently. A fitting emblem, Hercule. Poirot's aquamarine eyes reflected the carving's lines. Yes, Hastings. A testament that Thornwood's legacy was never merely in stone and hedge, but in the hearts of those who chose honesty over concealment. They traced the paths outward, pausing at each alcove, the site of Nurse Moffat's vigil, Sedgwick's trowel found in shadow, Lady Eleanor's crimson cloak dropped in fear, now reborn as named stations of reflection with their own titles: Compassion's Corner, Forgiveness's Niche, Hope's Refuge. As they emerged into the orchard, the trees, now leafless silhouettes, stood vigil around the pavilion. The villagers formed a circle as Poirot addressed them one final time. Thornwood Hall's grandeur rests not solely upon its stones, but upon the promises kept by every soul within its care. We have learned that any maze can be unmade by the courage to confess, the grace to forgive, and the will to rebuild. May the echoes of this day guide all who walk these paths, now and forever. Smoke curled from the pavilion's hearth as volunteers served steaming cider and ginger cakes. Laughter rose like spring's first song, mingling with the scent of burning wood and holly. Thornwood's tapestry, once frayed by secrecy, now gleamed in full colour beneath winter's gentle light. In the final twilight, Poirot and Hastings shared a quiet moment by the fountain, where ice formed a delicate filigree on sculpted stone. Hastings exhaled content. Mon ami, Thornwood gives me hope that no secret, however deep, can resist the light of truth. Poirot's moustaches trembled in a rare display of genuine warmth. Yes, Hastings, Thornwood's labyrinth found its way to redemption, and now its beacon shines for all. Our case here may conclude, but its lessons endure, a testament to the gentle art of unveiling every hidden path. They turned at last to bid farewell to Thornwood Hall's resplendent gates, where servants and villagers lined the drive, lanterns held high. Halby and Beatrice emerged to shake hands. Eleanor and Carmen exchanged heartfelt embraces, and the steward and head gardener offered respectful bows. With one final bow, Poirot entered the carriage, short as ever on words, but brimming with satisfaction. Hastings took the reins of conversation. "Well, Hercule, back to Baker Street, or shall we seek another maze?" Poirot's voice, soft but certain, replied, "Let us return, Hastings, for the world holds many mysteries, yet none so profound as the journey from darkness into light, and as the carriage rolled away beneath Thornwood's lantern glow, the maze's silence remained, not a hushed foreboding, but a peaceful lullaby, echoing the triumph of love confessed, truth revealed, and the promise of Thornwood's everlasting light."